Okay, so prevalence of PTSD, we're looking at racial differences and socioeconomic status differences. So go through our review, what we've done so far. Last lesson we looked at gender, which is about the cognition, and then today we're going to look at these racial and socioeconomic differences. And what we're looking at here is socioeconomic status, right? People with varying levels of wealth and resources, and how that might play a role in developing PTSD. This Kahoot goes from 4.1 to 4.5. They can play that. Oh, we've already done a review, that's okay. Now, I like to give the students some context, looking at some stats about inequality, and then asking, is this an issue that 1% had 40% of the wealth? So, there's both sides to that story. And again, then looking at some differences and looking at inequalities of wealth. And here we look at here we're looking at racial differences. So here we can see black and Hispanic much lower than white non-Hispanic. The average is 51, so they're beneath the average, and then non-Hispanic whites, and then Asians at the very top. And then what would be interesting to see would be the percentage of Asians developing PTSD. I haven't read a lot of that literature. Most of it historically compares blacks and whites. So that could be an interesting one to look into. Sorry, thinking out loud. So this gives a little bit of context because what we're saying here is that maybe Hispanic and black people, which has been shown for them to develop PTSD more often, is based on their resources, their ability to deal with trauma and the aftermath of trauma, based on their resources, their socioeconomic status. Okay, so one possible answer for this is simply they're exposed to more trauma. But we saw in Solomon's study that even though the men were more exposed to trauma, they got less PTSD. So that doesn't really stack up. Okay, and so yeah, thinking here, these are three stats, and then students try and get them to think, could they explain for themselves why these might exist? And then it's just reading in the notes, trying to find the answer. These are the factors, so their occupation, or their race, and this is the statistics. So if they're writing about this, they want to be able to state the difference in prevalence. It might not be a specific percentage all the time. It could just be a general difference, and then see if they can come up with some possible explanations in the table. So and then discuss their answers as a class, and write the good ones up here. Okay, and then so now after they have a go at themselves, now I like to come in and talk and explain it. So these are why these slides are here. So this is what I was explaining before, that it can't just be being exposed to trauma, because we didn't see that in Solomon's study. What it might be is that in veterans, they could be more likely to experience stresses after they come back from the war. So if you think about what life's like for black people, Hispanic, especially if you're thinking about Vietnamese war veterans, Vietnam War veterans, this was right in the height of the civil rights movement. So they could have been suffering more discrimination that could have increased their stress levels and anxiety. Here, the study that we look at Garrison's is focusing on a natural disaster, so a slightly different experience of trauma. And the explanation here could be that, and it could also be after war as well, actually. Like if you don't have the resources to pay for counseling, to pay for medication, to visit the hospital, get treatment, if you don't have the money to do that, then you might not get the help you need, so more likely to develop and PTSD perhaps. So it could also be used for veterans. But here what we're looking at is if after a natural disaster you have less resources, so you've lost your house, your car's been damaged. If you don't have the money to replace those things, or maybe you've lost your job, it could add. It's very easy to see how that could add up to your stress. And so the socioeconomic status, your wealth, is increasing the stressful events after the event, which is contributing to the development of PTSD. Okay. What I do is get the students to use that explanation. That's the explanation, and then they go through and here's where they take notes on the evidence. Okay, and so hopefully they can link that. So what we're looking at here, it's the ability to deal with the socioeconomic status equates to wealth, money, resources, and then the ability to deal with your trauma by things like if it's a natural disaster, being able to replace what you lost. If it's coming back from war, being able to seek treatment and pay for treatment. Now here's an optional one you could do. If you like it, I decided to take it out of the final copy, but I left it here in case you might like it. Whereas they could actually create their own, like we've looked at some other fictional stories about characters. Here they could create their own story about someone who's gone through a traumatic event, and then they can use that story to show how their low socioeconomic status contributed to their PTSD symptoms. Right, that's another alternative. And it connect extended challenge idea for homework, and then the last lesson in prevalence we look at developmental influences, which is also closely connected to socioeconomic status as well.